No, honey, I'm sorry. We can have more sex later. I've got to go color grade. Oh, hello there, everybody, and welcome back to a man who, believe it or not, is not a financial advisor. My name is Edinger, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of color grading. There's a lot you don't know behind the scenes that goes into making a YouTube video. One of the most beautiful things, in my opinion, is the art of color grading. You do not have to color grade videos. You can just shoot with an automatic setting in your camera, but by shooting flat like this and then color grading in post, it really allows you to artistically choose what to focus on when you get into the big leagues, or just what colors you want to use that look fancy. Also, by the way, this video is sponsored by Squarespace, and I'll be hearing more about them in the middle of the video. I think the art of color grading can be very beautiful, so hopefully if you're someone that has no experience with this at all, you can find this very interesting. Or if you're someone that does shoot with a flat profile like S-Log3, as I like to call it, S-Log2, C-Log, any of those flat gammas, well, guess what? Hopefully this video you can learn from me, or learn what not to do, possibly. And if you're someone that just shoots video with a standard normal picture profile, well, hopefully this inspires you to give it a shot. All right, now it's time to push me into the corner. Well, hello and welcome to my NLE of choice. This is Final Cut Pro X. I've been a Final Cut Pro editor way back to when I had Final Cut Pro 7, just an OG. Now, a lot of people can be editing and color grading in DaVinci Resolve, which has a bit more functionality for this. However, I've really worked out a great workflow for how I'm able to color grade in Final Cut Pro, and I feel like I don't need the benefits that can come to DaVinci. It'll increase too much to my workflow, basically. And if you're someone else that just wants to stick with this one, that's great. Or if you're someone that uses Premiere, well, hopefully your app didn't crash by the time you got to this part of the video. All right, so first step, what we're gonna do here is I made my own custom workspace. I have color 1 and color 2. Usually I use 2 monitors. This one's off right now because I wanted to show you my entire screen. I can't record both screens at the same time. So here we go, using the smallest screen. Color 1, I just have it with a vector scope here, and this one has the Luma graph, just so I can know what the colors are. So the first step here, make sure you have a gray card, super duper cheap on Amazon, pick it up. It's just so you can really make sure you have the perfect grade. So basically, if you don't know how to shoot with S-Log3, S-Log3 requires a 41% middle gray. So basically middle gray needs to be exposed at 41%. How do we check that? Well, I've brought this line here down to 41. And what we want to do is isolate the values in that gray. So the first thing I do whenever I start color grading is, let's just go to all video and audio, go here. I'm going to type in mask, and then I'm going to delete it and type in draw because it's a draw mask. I'm going to drag one here. And actually, just because I know I'm going to use it later, I'm going to drag another one on top. All right, we go to the first draw mask, and we're just going to isolate the gray, just because, like I said, this is a perfect gray card. It should be 41% IRE. So as you can see, I shot this well. I don't have to really do any tweaking. If I wanted to be incredibly nitpicky, which, you know what, I genuinely am, there we go. The tiniest hair. Also important to do here is make sure it's properly white balanced. You should do that beforehand, but sometimes it can be off by a little bit. The way to do that is to tell if there's a little tiny dot right in the middle of those crosshairs. And you want it to be exactly in the middle. The other way of doing it is to click this and go into the RGB overlay, and this looks pretty white. If anything, you might say that the magenta is a little bit overpowering, and what you can do in that stead is go this way. See how the green separates from the magenta? So you kind of want it to be a solid white line. You don't want any yellow, you don't want any blue, you don't want any pink, you don't want any green. So for this particular clip, it looks like it's already properly white balanced, but just make sure to tweak these right here. If it's not, now that we've actually perfectly done that, it's already good to go. We're going to get rid of that first draw mask. Next up, what we're going to do is we need to apply a transformation LUT. Now you could do this by hand. This is a thing you are able to do where you map out the colors perfectly. However, in this day and age, for my personal workflow, I find there's so many free professional LUTs that you can use that their main purpose is to convert the log space into Rec 709 or the standard color space. Now this is the official Sony S-Log3 LUT here. Bam, that's their conversion. I find it a bit too contrasty, so I found another free one on the internet that I use. It's very, very similar, as you can see, but this is just a bit more easy to work with, in my opinion. Now you might just say, hey, this looks great. And for all intents and purposes, you could very well upload this video. It looks totally fine, actually. But we can improve upon things always. The next step is going to be add another color wheel. What we want to do is make sure the darkest of darks, the blackest of blacks, are all the way very near 0. And so because my room is really well lit, there's not going to be too many of those, but I'm going to go to shadows here, and I'll pull that down. There we go. So the darkest bits right there are just hitting the 0. If anything, I could pull it up just a tiny bit There we go. And next, I want to make sure the highlights don't necessarily hit 100, but just below 100, unless you want any peaking. So there we go. Now, I do have this light here is a bit overexposed when I pull it too high, but the thing that really is going to make sure this looks amazing is that my skin tones need to be the perfect IRE. I'll get onto that later. At this point, I'm going to pull down the midtones exposure a little bit. That just adds a small amount of contrast in my midtones. Now I'm going to drag that up right here, turn on this draw mask, and I'm going to select my skin. This way I can see what the exposure values are for my skin tones. Now, already, it honestly looks, if I drag this up, like my skin tones are pretty bang on exactly where I want them. Like I said, I'm in a studio environment that I can control this. If not, what you're going to do is really mess with this color wheels too. Mess with the midtones or the highlights to bring your skin up to the value that it's supposed to be. My skin looks properly exposed anywhere between 68 to 75 IRE, and that's pretty much bang on for what we've got right here. So I think that looks pretty great. If anything, I'm going to turn the highlights down just a little bit so it adds a bit more of a natural look. Our next step, if you can believe it, add another color wheels. All right, I do love a good color wheel. The next color wheels is just to deal with saturation. You might think, well, this looks pretty good. This is up to your taste. For me, I always like to add just a little bit more. And so right around there, that is just the little bit of extra saturation I enjoy. It doesn't look too over the top. It doesn't look too under the bottom. Don't know what that even means, but that's an important step. You might sometimes come into issues where your skin is slightly green or slightly magenta. This is the sign that someone has not color corrected the greatest. So next what we're gonna do is select our skin tone. There he is. And then we're gonna go down to hue/saturation curves. So for this one, we're gonna use this eyedropper tool. Select the skin tone right there. You want these skin tones to be right on this orange line. Honestly, I've never had a video this perfect. This sounds like I set this up. In fact, maybe I should have messed up a bit so that I could have had more to work with, but it looks like my skin tones are exactly on that line. Sometimes, and we'll do this just for the example here, sometimes you'll find this is what your skin looks like. And as you can see, it's a bit off to the left. And if I turn off the draw mask, you'll see right there. Yeah, you might get this a lot depending on what you're shooting with. It's just slightly greenish, or you might find the opposite. It's slightly too magenta. Every camera manufacturer has a different color science. And so you are going to run up against those issues. However, as we've just seen, for the most part, it's pretty spot on. See, look at that. It's a bit too magenta. Look at me. Hello, I'm Thanos. I'm here to snap for you. What was that impression? So at this point, let's bring that back down. And there we go. That looks perfect. Maybe there's a tiny tweak in there. I hope so. That looks like a really nice skin tone. And here's where you can actually stop. This is a properly color corrected shot. And for all intents and purposes, this video is now good to go. You can upload this if you want. But you can now start grading, adding a bit more of your style on top. For me personally, what I like to do, if you can believe it, we're going for the color wheels, all right? Add another color wheel to the party. For this one specifically, we're also going to be adding here a color mask. So on this, I've eyedropped my skin tone. We're just going to select skin tones, click view masks, and basically the white is what I've selected. So you really just want to have fun and finagle around with this HSL slider until you get just your skin selected. You can have some in the background depending on how nitpicky you are, but there we go. That looks good. And this one is the gradual increase or decrease here. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Depending on if your subject is moving, you can also add here a shape mask. And this just makes sure that, for instance, this color correction that I'm going to be doing is only applying to what is inside of the shape and the color mask. So therefore, as you can see, we're actually stopping it from the left and right there. Right now, we're selecting inside of the color mask. So everything, like I said, that is white. And what we're going to do is take those tones and just make them a little bit more orange on the skin tone line, so that way you don't look too weird. And then we're going to click outside, and we're just going to drag it the opposite direction into that teal. I do not do this a lot. You can go really wild with this if you want. Personally, I try and make it so subtle that it's barely even noticeable, but it just adds a small amount of color contrast because orange and teal are separate colors on the old color wheel there. And so your skin tone will now pop out from the background just a little bit more. It's a tiny little bit of detail that will add that extra spice that makes the video look that much better. So here it is before, and here it is after. You might be like, Evan, there's nothing done. Like I said, this is done to taste. I like to do it incredibly subtly. Now, we can actually do one more color wheel because why not, all right? We really want the viewer's eyes to be looking at the subject, wherever the subject is in the frame. For me, when I'm doing a vlog like this, I'm sitting in the middle. And so we're gonna add one more color wheel, all right? Just one more. For this one, what I like to do is create a shape mask. So for this shape mask, Here we go. We're going to be making basically a vignette. All right. So for this, I'm going to be selecting everything outside of the vignette. So that is clicking this outside button here, and just grab the shadows and very lightly pull them down just a tad. So here's before and here's after. It's really subtle, but it really makes your eyes punch in right to what you're actually looking for. Sometimes I'll actually go in and I'll add a color curve. What you can do is eye drop. Boop. All right, looks like that's the edge of my skin tone there. And I want to put another one right there. So, wow, quite a contrast. As long as I increase this a little bit and then pull this down a little bit, there we go. What we can do is artificially increase the contrast as well as what we've already done. And then before, after, before, after. At this point, we do have one more step in this entire process. You don't have to do any of this. You could just shoot standard, but this final step is very important. I shoot with my Sony a7S III with the detail at -7 because adding detail in the camera means that you can't really tweak it as much. Like, it's a bit noisier. And so I make it a bit soft in camera and then add it back in post. And so to do that, I'm going to search for sharpen tool. There we go. Drag and drop. And now it's applied a sharpening to the clip of 2.5, and always make sure to have this at the end of your grade. Otherwise, you're going to be adding colors to the sharpness, and I just don't think that's a good idea. If you want to make sure your videos are extra crisp, just check the sharpness in post and add the sharpen tool accordingly, especially if you're using a LUT that you downloaded on the internet, because you can't actually add sharpness to a LUT. It doesn't quite work like that. All right, and the cool part of the video, let's see each of these effects applied one by one. So here's what it'll look like when I am flat, shot straight out of camera. Then I white balance it and make sure to balance 41% IRE for the gray. Then I apply a conversion LUT. That's what's just been done. Then we apply a bit of exposure mapping, making sure that the highest whites and the lowest blacks are within that 0 to 100. Then we apply a bit more saturation. Oh, time to fix the skin tones. Luckily, mine were shot all right. Then adding a little bit more orange and teal. Hello. And then lastly, the sharpen. All right, what do you think? Not bad, right? And one of the greatest parts of a color grade like this is if you like the way that you shot this and that you graded this, you can just copy the settings over to another clip and then mess with the color wheels accordingly. For instance, here's a shot the other day I took, and this time we're at nighttime. So if I copy the settings over, bam. Ooh, you can see that the blacks are a bit crushed. Just looking here, look how low those are. And so all I would have to do is go down to color wheels 2, and mess with the shadows a bit, pull that up. Ooh, and I've just saved it quite a lot. At this point, we've got quite contrast on this, so maybe for this one specifically, I'd also need to make sure that that gray card is in the right spot, possibly pull this up. The midtones seem a bit high. So as long as you've got a good grade, you can just go in and tweak anything you want, even if it's a shot in a non-controlled environment. For instance, here's the shot I've got of my friend Dodie. She's singing along. I can just go bish, bash, bosh, pop. Now here is the shot that I've just graded from in my bedroom. However, it looks freaking great already in this spot, but there are some things we could tweak. As you can see, the sun is a bit high, and I think the shadows could use a bit of crushing. So what we're gonna do here is go into color wheels 2. Yet again, we're gonna pull down those highlights just a little bit. There we go, right onto the 100, and possibly pull those shadows down. Whoop, not too much, just a little, and add a bit of contrast to her face. The skin tone's there, midtone's down. There we go. So that looks like a finished look, except you always want to make sure you're checking out those masks that you've done. Yeah, her skin has been selected with my standard one, but also so is literally everything else. I shot this at sunset. Personally, this is the type of shot where I wouldn't really want to orange and teal it. The sunset's doing that enough. So I'm just going to turn that one off. Bam, and there we go. I have a finished grade already, and I've not done much work. Now, depending on where you are in your color grading journey, let's just say you've just started, this has inspired you a bit, but you don't want to have to take all the time to learn how to do all of this, you can just buy a LUT. Can you believe I'm actually selling one? If you like this exact look of how I color grade, you can now get this exact LUT to make your footage look great as long as you're shooting with a flat log profile. Or I also made some LUTs if you shoot with standard profile. Let's just say you don't want to do this at all and you want to make sure it looks good either way, but I've got you covered. You see, here's a clip here I've got for you. That's just me, shot with the standard picture profile. This looks good for all intents and purposes, but it's still a bit flat. As you can see with the standard picture profile, we've got a nice amount of color, but you don't want to have to take the time to color grade yourself. So what you can do is go down and find yourself a custom LUT, drag that across, bish bash bosh, there's me, and go to your recently purchased E2 LUT. I've got the S-Log3 ones for more advanced users, and I've also got the all-rounder pack, which is a standard grade. Bam, look at that. Looks I think personally way better. Obviously, I made it myself. Bish, bash, bosh. Wow, amazing. Or if you want, I've also made an orange and teal one to make yourself pop out just that amount more. Bam. Look at that. Now, like I said, this is quite over the top, but depending on what you're shooting at, maybe you want that like crazy color contrast to look like you've really spent a lot of time in the grade. Because hey, I did, so now you get my benefits. And like I said, I do have a lot available for S-Log3 as well, if that's what you're editing in and you just want something that will make your clips look pretty good. I've spent a lot of time on them. My favorite is OT Whispers because it's a very subtle orange teal. Bam, look at that. Or I have one that's a standard good color correction, which is the standard S-Log3 Savior. And then there's the more hardcore orange and teal. But as I said before, do not forget, regardless of which LUT you apply, do make sure to apply sharpening in post if you've removed it from your camera. So there we go. Bam. And that is what the clip looks like. Amazing. Now, if you're wondering, well, Evan, where can I buy these LUTs? I'd like to know where I can get them. You can actually get them on my website, evanedinger.com, which I built with today's video sponsor, Squarespace. Thank you so much. I never thought I'd be able to make a website, but it was just so incredibly easy. Not only do I have an incredibly great looking portfolio of all the photos I've taken, but I have my own web store. Everything's just dealt with completely. And when I had a problem where I wanted to do some more advanced CSS, I was able to talk to customer service and they helped me out immediately. Not because I'm Evan Edinger. They don't know who I am. I'm just some guy. They just messaged me just because they've got good customer support. So if you want a website with your own portfolio web store, if you want to buy my LUTs, well, buy my LUTs, and then also sign up to Squarespace with my code Evan Edinger at checkout. You get 10% off your own website. Please do it. Supports the channel and supports you making a cool website. Thanks, Squarespace. And without further ado, basically, this is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this because this is one of my favorite aspects of video editing. And even when I get an editor to edit some of my videos, I always color grade my own videos and I send them the LUT that I make just because I love it so much. So hopefully either I've inspired you to start color grading or maybe to get my LUTs, or anyway, just to be more interested in the behind the scenes of making YouTube videos. I hope you've enjoyed this. And other than that, I guess I will see you on the next one. Goodbye. Can't really fly back in the chair now, can I?